My understanding of our math story begins in Mound Bayou, Mississippi with Mama Deal. Now, Mama Deal is Shuggy's mother. And Mama Deal and all the children that she raised worked on the farm as sharecroppers. That means they stayed on someone else's land. They ensured that the land was planted and harvested, and they got to plant their food right alongside the people who they were growing for. All right? And that required a lot of calculations from Mama Deal. She had a number of children that she was taking care of, hers and her grandchildren, maybe 14 people total. And she had to make sure that those people were fed all year round, whether the ground was growing food or not. That planning required math. She had to take into account what she had to grow, any losses that might occur because of bugs or weather or whatever other thing happened. And she had to make sure that for her perspective, she had to make sure that she made enough food that she didn't have to depend on anybody else for anything. Not for money, not for food, not for anything else. Because people try to take advantage of you, especially white folk. So that was my beginning of my understanding of our math story. So I have to plant X number of seeds of X number of plants. I'm growing corn, I'm growing potatoes, I'm growing sweet potatoes. I had to feed this many number of people, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And it was so important to Mama Deal that she would have all of her children stay at home. You weren't allowed to attend school unless you had planted for that season. You weren't allowed to attend school unless you had taken care of your plants and harvested for other seasons. That's how important it was. So you had to make sure all that was done before you entered the schoolhouse trying to learn the ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. Now, I assume that on my dad's side of the family, something similar happened because my dad's family had a farm as well. Prior to coming to Rochester, New York, my grandmother was in North Carolina, my grandfather was in Virginia. And we used to get food from the farm every summer. So they had to do something similar. It's just that I never heard the story quite the same. And what I did hear is that my grandfather, my dad's dad, he used to call my dad the old man. So he and my grandmother would bring us vegetables every summer, right? But that was part of his work was also doing catering. So as part of his catering work, he had to do math. Since he was trying to help serve people and make sure that their guests had enough food to eat, he had to account for the number of guests, the number of staff needed to take care of those guests. Do we have the correct number of plates necessary to serve the people? He had to do math because he was the guy in charge of all the other staff. All right? So those are my first two introductions to math in terms of our math story. Now, I used to like math because I could always check my answer to see if it was right. There wasn't any argument about whether or not the answer was correct because I just did the calculations. And when I needed support doing those calculations one day, I went to my mom and asked her if she could support me with math, right? Now, I went to my mom because she was the one in our house who kept the books for her salon. Her salon is a hairdressing salon, a business, right? And Mom was the one who did all the accounting, all the calculations of how much money came in, how much money went out, how much money was going to have to go out, how much money we expected to come in the future. She did all that for the family. She was taught by our accountant. We had all, black lawyer, black accountant, black dentist, black doctor. I didn't even know, white folks existed for those positions for a while. And so when Mom told me, I think you need to go to your dad for this one because I was doing algebra. I said, okay, because she said that she didn't know math the way he did. Now, I didn't quite understand that, given that she was doing all the math at the house and she was the one paying the bills as well and in charge of cash flow, when money came in and when money came out. I said, okay. And so I went to my dad, and my first introduction to my dad was his smile at the thought of helping me with an algebra problem. I didn't, up to that time, I didn't know that my dad liked math or even did math. And he told me at that point that he really enjoyed math. He thought he was good at it. So he showed me how to do a problem in school. When he helped me do the answer, I took it back to my teacher. And my teacher said, I can see that your dad helped you with this problem because of how he solved it. It was a way of solving it that my teacher hadn't taught yet. And so he said, well, now that I know your dad can do the math, I want you to go home and start practicing on the math yourself. So I practiced both the guy's way, and I tried to understand my dad's way. I didn't quite get it at the time, but I would get it later. So the people, everybody that I knew who dealt with numbers, I never knew that if they had any problem with math. It was my mom telling me that she thought she couldn't do math. It was my first introduction to somebody saying they didn't know how to do math, and I didn't even understand that given what she was doing for the house. She's also grocery shopping. She's the one making sure that if they're using credit cards, the credit cards get paid with interest.
All right. So another question is, when did math start to get fuzzy for you?
When did math start to get fuzzy for me? Math started to get, okay. I was pretty good at math my entire life. I've been pretty good at math my entire life. Math started to get fuzzy for me when I stopped using it. See, math in school, it has procedures, processes that I could follow. Whether I could listen to the instructor and learn how to do it step by step, or whether I looked at a problem that was already done in the book and I just copied how it was done. Because I follow procedures well, I recognize patterns well, and also because I do a lot of checking of my answers, I recognize the interactions between numbers, you know. And for me, since I didn't use math in my everyday life as much, I farmed. I grew food just like my grandparents did, and I didn't use math to plot out what to plant and how many to plant. I didn't use math to decide how much I need to configure a plot of land in order to plant all the things I'm planting. I didn't use math in my daily life the same way I used in school. So I could do the calculations often in my head. You know, if I'm grocery shopping, if I'm trying to take whatever I have and divide it among a number of people, if I'm trying to say, you know, to calculate how many of a particular thing I need to buy or an item I need to grow so I can, you know, feed everybody at the house. I could do those things, but it often wasn't done in the same way as we did in school. So sometimes I would lose because I didn't use them. The formulas or equations or the expressions that I would use in school. All right, so that's how it would get fuzzy for me from lack of use. And so in order for me to remember how to do something, sometimes I have to just go back through. Like you can't just always ask me, hey Dad, how do you do this calculus problem? Well, I got an A in calculus, all my calculus classes. When's the last time I've used calculus for anything? See, many of these math things you use in real life, but you can use in real life. But unless you have a job that does it, or unless you just have an interest, and I didn't have a job that did it or necessarily an interest in using those things, I didn't use the formulas in real life. So that's when math started to get fuzzy for me for lack of use. So now in school it was good. After school, after years and years of not using the math, I'd be like, what was the formula for getting the slope of a line? I don't remember that. You know, what was that? You know, what was the log of E? What is that? I couldn't remember those things. So that's when math started to get fuzzy for me.
All right. That's his math story.